I almost became my father-in-law's wife, while my husband was still breathing under the same roof. Hey everyone, I never thought I'd be confessing this. Stomachs are actually shaking as I type these words at 2 a.m., heart hammering like it wants to escape. Let me take you back to how my ordinary married life quietly turned into the most forbidden obsession I've ever known. I was just a typical young wife back then, married for only 2 years. We lived in a cramped little apartment where the walls felt thin and the future felt thinner. My husband worked long hours at his construction job, leaving before dawn and dragging home after dark, smelling of concrete dust and exhaustion. Most days it was just me handling the housework, picking up freelance gigs online to help stretch our money. Things were tight. That's why we finally moved into his father's large old house on the edge of town. It felt practical at the time, a temporary arrangement to save on rent. His father had been widowed for years, living alone in that big quiet place with its creaky wooden floors and tall windows. He seemed harmless enough. Quiet, steady, always keeping to himself. The first time I really noticed him wasn't dramatic. It was just an ordinary rainy afternoon. I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard the front door open earlier than usual. He came in carrying heavy grocery bags, rain dripping from his jacket, his shirt damp and clinging to his strong shoulders in a way that made something inside me pause. Water traced slope as down his neck. He set the bags down and looked up, catching my eye. Then he smiled, not the tired half-smile my husband gave me lately, but something warmer, steadier, quietly commanding, like he saw me, really saw me, standing there in my simple house clothes with my hair messy from the day. That moment, something electric passed between us, a flicker, a pull. My breath caught without warning, and I quickly looked away, pretending to smooth a wrinkle in one of my husband's shirts. The rain kept tapping against the windows, but the air in the room suddenly felt heavier. Thicker. I could smell the wet earth on him mixed with something deeper, like old wooden faint cologne. He didn't say much, just carried the bags to the kitchen, but I felt his presence lingering even after he left the room. While I was making tea, he passed behind me in the narrow hallway. His arm brushed mine, barely, just the lightest graze of fabric against fabric. Yet my skin prick led as if he'd touched me on purpose. I told myself it was nothing. He was my husband's father, twice my age, family. Still, when I lay in bed that night listening to my husband's even breathing beside me, I kept replaying that smile. The way his damp shirt had outlined the lines of his chest. The steady warmth that seemed to radiate from him even from across the room. Why did my pulse quicken every time I remembered it? I pressed my face into the pillow, ashamed of the small ache blooming low in my belly. This was wrong, so wrong. He was Dad, the man who had welcomed us into his home out of kindness. I loved my husband. I did. But the house suddenly felt smaller, and his quiet footsteps in the hallway started echoing in my thoughts longer than they should. The next morning I tried to act normal. I made breakfast like always, but when he came into the kitchen for coffee, our eyes met again over the rim of his mug. He thanked me softly, voice low and calm, and for a second I forgot how to answer. The steam rose between us like a secret. I nodded quickly and turned back to the sink, heart racing, water running over my hands while I wondered why one innocent glance from him could make the whole room feel charged. Like gravity had shifted and I was being pulled slowly, helplessly, toward something I knew I should never want. And then, just as I was rinsing the last plate, he reached past me for a towel. His chest was so close to my back I could feel the heat through my thin blouse. He didn't move away right away, neither did I. The rain had stopped outside, but inside me a storm was just beginning to gather, and I had no idea how to make it stop. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just the house playing tricks on me, making everything feel too close. He was my husband's father, after all, twice my age, the man who had opened his door when we had nowhere else to go. Every time my thoughts wandered to the steady way he moved or the low timbre of his voice filling the kitchen, a wave of sickness rolled through me. This is wrong, I whispered into the quiet while folding my husband's shirts, fingers pressing hard into the fabric as if I could squeeze the feeling out. Yes, Dad. I love my husband. I do, but the walls seem to shrink day by day. His presence started slipping into every empty space in my head, quiet and impossible to ignore. Mornings became the first test. We would share coffee at the small table by the window, steam curling up between us like a secret neither of us named. Our fingers brushing just enough for the contact to linger. The warmth of his skin stayed on mine long after he pulled away. It'd catch his eyes holding on me a second longer than necessary, and the air would thicken until breathing felt like work. When my husband left early for work, my father-in-law would reach up to the high shelf for the mugs I couldn't quite grab, his body so near I could feel the faint heat radiating through his shirt. Sandalwood soap and something deeper, like sun-warmed wood, would wrap around me. I'd thank him to softly, voice catching, and hurry to the sink so he wouldn't see the flush creeping up my neck. Evenings were worse. My husband often came home late, so we sat together on the couch for the news. The television glow the only light. The cushions dipped when he settled beside me, our shoulders almost touching. A laugh from him, low and rumbling, would send an unexpected shiver across my skin. I'd shift slightly, telling myself it was to get comfortable, but really I was fighting the strange pull that made me want to lean closer. One afternoon he steadied me on the stairs when I missed a step, his calloused palm wrapping around my elbow with surprising gentleness. The rough texture of his hand against my bare arm sent a spark straight through me. I murmured thanks and pulled away too quickly, heart hammering as I continued up alone. That night, lying beside my sleeping husband, I couldn't stop replaying the moment. The way his fingers had lingered just a fraction longer than needed. The solid warmth that had steadied more than just my balance. Stop it, I begged myself in the dark, tears stinging my eyes while my husband's soft snores filled the room. You're married. This is disgusting. H.E.S. family. Yet the obsession only grew, turning the smallest things into something I hid even from myself. The way he said my name when he offered to help with groceries. How his laugh seemed to settle low in my chest. I started noticing the silver at his temples, the quiet confidence in his stride, and hated how my body responded with a slow, unwelcome heat. I tried harder to push it down. I spent extra time on the phone with my husband during his breaks, reminding myself of the life we were building. But every time I hung up and turned around, there he was, offering a glass of water or asking if I needed anything from the store. His voice, calm and deep, would brush against my ears like a touch I wasn't allowed to want. The house felt smaller still, every hallway and doorway suddenly narrow enough that our paths crossed constantly. Another evening, passing dishes at dinner, our hands met again over a bowl. The brief contact sent electricity humming under my skin. I pulled back fast, nearly dropping everything, and laughed it off as clumsiness. He only smiled that steady smile, eyes holding mine until I looked away first. Later, alone in the bathroom, I pressed cool hands to my burning cheeks and whispered the same words again. This can't keep happening. I won't let it. But the craving was already deepening, twisting innocent moments into secret thoughts I buried under layers of guilt. His arm around my waist that one time helping me reach something in the pantry. The memory replayed uninvited while I lay awake. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the ache that bloomed despite every protest in my mind. H.E.S. Dad, I repeated like a prayer. I love my husband. Still, when morning came and I heard his footsteps in the hall, my pulse betrayed me once more. The storm inside me was fading. It was gathering strength, and I was terrified of what would happen the next time our eyes met across the table, and neither of us looked away first. The storm hit without warning, lights flickering once before plunging the house into thick darkness. Rain hammered the roof like it wanted inside, and thunder rolled so close the windows rattled. My husband was gone for the week, leaving just the two of us under one roof. I fumbled for candles while he moved calm and sure, striking a match that lit his face in warm gold. We ended up on the old couch, knees almost brushing, sharing the bottle of red he'd been saving for something special. Each sip spread heat through my chest, loosening the careful distance he'd been guarding. Lightning cracked overhead. I jumped hard, a small gasp slipping out before I could stop it. His hand came down on my thigh to steady me, palm heavy through the thin fabric of my night-dress. The warmth of it sank straight into my skin, solid and unmoving. Neither of us pulled away. The candle flamed danced between us, throwing shadows that made everything feel closer, more dangerous. I could feel every slow breath he took, the way his fingers stayed exactly where they landed, not gripping, not gripping, not retreating, just there. My heart slammed against my ribs so loud I was sure he could hear it. This was the first real line we crossed, and we both knew it. The next evening his call came through, voice tired on the other end, saying work would keep him away another week. I hung up with a knot in my throat, telling myself I was only disappointed for the right reasons. But when my father-in-law set the table for just us two, the air already felt different, heavier. He cooked simple things that smelled like home and comfort, pouring wine again until the edges of the room softened. After the plates were cleared he stood, phone playing an old slow song I hadn't heard in years. "Come here," he said quietly, holding out his hand. I told myself it was harmless, just dancing, but the moment his arm slid around my waist and pulled me in, everything shifted. Our bodies pressed together, his heat wrapping around me like a blanket I cowled in refuse. His scent, clean soap mixed with something deeper, wooded warmth, filled my lungs every time I breathed. He looked down at me, like I was the only woman left in the world, eyes steady and hungry in a way my husband's never were. The music swayed us slowly, closer with each turn, until there was no space left for pretending. When he lowered his head the kiss came deep and unhurried, nothing like the quick familiar ones I was used to. It pulled at something inside me I didn't know was starving, and I let it happen. In that long, breathless moment I saw daughter-in-law. I became something else entirely, something that terrified and thrilled me at the same time. After that night, the careful walls we'd built crumbled fast. We stole moments wherever we could. In the kitchen while my husband was still hours away at the office, his hands would find my waist from behind as I stood at the counter, breath warm against my neck, making me forget what I was doing. Quiet afternoons in his bedroom when the house was empty, the door clicked shut and time seemed to stretch, every touch slow and deliberate, leaving me trembling with feelings I had no right to feel. Even when we only had 5 minutes, the urgency made it sharper, sweeter, his presence filling the space like he belonged there more than anyone. He made me feel seen, protected, desired in ways my marriage had quietly lost somewhere along the way. Small gifts appeared on my pillow, a scarf it admired once, fresh flowers he knew I liked, gentle care in the way he listened when I spoke about my day. The thrill of it lived under our shared roof, almost like having a new husband right beside the old one, hidden in plain sight. I told myself it was temporary, just relief from the loneliness that had been growing for years, nothing that could last. Yet every time our eyes met across the room the pull grew stronger, the ache deeper, and the guilt only made the hunger burn hotter. One afternoon the rain started again, soft this time, tapping against the windows while we stood too close in the hallway. His fingers brushed mine as he reached for the same light switch, lingering there until my breath caught. I wanted to step back. I wanted to step closer. The storm outside felt like it was inside me now, building toward something I was sure I could stop. And part of me had already stopped wanting to. The guilt crept in like fog rolling off the sea, thick and silent at first, then swallowing everything. My husband started noticing the change in me, the way my laugh came easier when he called, the brightness I cowled and hid even over the phone. "You sound happy, he said one night, a question wrapped in suspicion that made my stomach twist. I lied softly, blaming it on the quiet house, the extra sleep, anything but the truth that sat heavy in my chest. That evening he surprised us, coming home hours earlier than planned, keys turning in the lock just as my father-in-law's hand had brushed my lower back in the kitchen, warm and sure. I jumped back, heart hammering against my ribs, while he moved away smooth as water, picking up a dish towel like nothing had happened. My husband stood in the doorway, eyes narrowing for a second too long, the air suddenly thick with words no one dared speak. He kissed my cheek, but it felt cold compared to the heat still lingering on my skin from the man who wasn't supposed to touch me at all. When we were alone again, my father-in-law's jealousy slipped out in quiet bursts. Every time I mentioned my husband's name, even casually, His jaw would tighten, his gaze darkening like clouds before thunder. "He doesn't see you the way I do," he whispered once, voice low and rough, pulling me close enough that our breaths mingled. The power he held pressed down on me then, the house, the money, the very rhythm of my days all circling back to him. I was caught between them, one I had promised forever to, and one who was quietly rewriting what forever could mean under this roof. Trapped, yet the trap felt like arms I kept running back into. Last night, after the lights dimmed and the house settled into its familiar hush, we found ourselves tangled in that dangerous closeness again. I lay there afterward, his scent clinging to me like a second skin, warm and masculine and impossible to wash away. My mind spun in circles, morality screaming one thing while my heart pulled another. Should I confess everything and watch my marriage shatter into pieces too sharp to pick up? Should I pack a bag and try to forget the way he looked at me, like I was already his? Or should I simply surrender, let myself slip fully into the role he offered every single day? The woman cared for, desired, held like a wife in the shadows? The ache inside me grew unbearable, shame and longing crashing together until I could hardly breathe. I wanted to run, to save what was left of the life I had chosen. But every time his eyes found mine across the table, or his voice called my name from the next room, the pull felt gravitational, impossible to fight. I was becoming her, the one who belonged here in ways my husband no longer understood, and the terrifying truth was how right it sometimes felt. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Part of me wants to run before the storm breaks us all, but another part already feels like his wife, heart and soul quietly rewriting the vows I once spoke. What would you do in my place? Should I stop before it's too late or finally give in completely? Tell me in the comments, because tomorrow I have to make a choice and I'll come back to tell you exactly what happens when I do. The details only get more intense from here.